My Childhood Experiences in a Small Rural Town, Part 2. Written by throwawaynothingmore. After a few days had passed since I confronted my father, I had decided to do some digging without either of my parents knowing. I couldn't tell if I could trust my mom. I knew that I couldn't trust my father, after all. So how could I trust her either? I couldn't trust a soul, at least in this town. My mother had gone to the market and my father was at work, so I had the house to myself for a few hours. I had been formulating my plan for the entire day, and I finally had the perfect chance. My parents always kept their bedroom door locked, but I knew they kept a spare key in the closet downstairs. After retrieving the key, I went upstairs to their bedroom, which was upstairs just across from the attic ladder. Opening the door, the first thing that I noticed is just how much it had changed. I guess that it had been longer since I was in here than I thought. Beige bedsheets, matching curtains, brown painted walls, and the old oak furniture gave the room a posh but also cozy feel. I decided to start with the dressers. Nothing. Next, the closet. Nothing. Under the bed. Still nothing. Slowly giving up hope, I noticed the old tall mirror was slightly off. Moving the mirror away, I found a small latch, like a cabinet built into the wall to appear as if it was just another section of wall. I pulled on the latch, revealing a small door big enough to fit a child. Me being a slight, smaller-framed guy, I was able to fit comfortably while crouched. As I opened it, I shined a small flashlight in. It was about 5 feet wide and 5 feet tall. A perfect square room with a small suitcase sitting in the corner. Moving in more, I grabbed the suitcase. Opening it up, I found more pictures. Most of them uneventful, but as I was going through the stack, they became more and more weird, more random pictures. Taken of a person in our yard at night. A tall and skinny figure just standing next to our house with no context. A child looking to be about 5 or 6 covered in mud, crying and malnourished. And the most disturbing, a small silhouette hanging by the neck from the rafters with a bag covering the face. I instantly could link the child in the second photo to the one in the third. Feeling nauseous and trembly, I could also instantly link the rafters and surroundings as none other than that barn from so long ago. Why would my parents have these? I was torn from my transfixed state by the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs. My mother's footsteps. Due to the cramped space, I couldn't get out fast enough. Turning around just in time to look up, startled at the sight of my mother's empty, blank stare. Seeing the photos in my hand, her eyes began to fill with tears. "Get out of there right now," she said coldly. I obeyed as she started slapping me and calling me foolish. "You idiot! You shouldn't have seen any of that. You have always let your curiosity get the better of you." I couldn't reply. I was stunned. She wasn't angry in the way that I expected, but more of a scared anger mixed with an anger of being caught. "Just go to your room. Go to your room now," she said while giving me a firm shove. "And don't come out until morning," she said from the other side of my bedroom door. That night when my father came home, I heard them arguing over something. Loud shouts and yelling coming from downstairs. Placing my ear to the wall, I couldn't really understand what was being said. But then I heard the only sentence I could make out from my mother. "Let's just tell him. He won't stop. Let's just tell him. He found the case. He knows too much for us to backtrack this now." More yelling followed, reaching into the early morning hours when I finally fell asleep. I woke up to find the house empty. It was noon, so I assumed that it was empty because my dad was at work and my mom was out doing her botanist club thing that she did every Saturday. But as the evening drew closer, I heard my dad's SUV pull up. I heard him unlock the door, come in and take off his coat. He did all of this without giving me a second glance. He looked up at me with cold, empty eyes. He calmly hung up his coat and then walked past me. As I turned around to face him, I felt his fist collide with the side of my face. Falling to the floor, stunned and in a daze, a spot formed in the vision of my right eye. I looked up just in time to see his steel-toed boot coming full force, slamming down into my stomach, then being raised up and brought down again, hard into the side of my chest. I felt a snap in my rib cage, a sharp but also dull pain shooting through my body. Picking me up, he slammed me against the wall and punched me hard against the side of my jaw. Holding my throat tightly in his grips, my toes just barely touching the floor, he said in an unnervingly calm voice, "If you don't listen to friendly tips, I'll just beat it into you." He grabbed my hair then and slammed my head into the wall, and then he shoved me into the table. As I tried to get up, he walked over, looking at me with a pitiful, disappointed look. How could I have fathered this? Such a pathetic excuse for a boy. He brought his heel down onto my ankle, and I screamed out loud in pain. Curiosity killed the cat. Haven't I told you that before? Haven't I? Multiple times I have. He barked. My thoughts went back to when I was younger, asking my father why Spencer never let me meet his parents. His words echoed in my head. Curiosity killed the cat, kiddo. The time I asked why I wasn't allowed in their bedroom or into the basement, he said, Curiosity killed the cat. I hadn't thought anything of his words back then, but now it was all clicking into place. Even though I still didn't know exactly what was going on, I knew that my father had something to do with that cult, and possibly with Spencer's disappearance. But I couldn't connect what his angle was at trying to keep me from digging or finding out more. Why would he try to get me to be quiet this way instead of just explaining to me what had happened and why I should stay quiet? You were always a talkative one. You were always nosy. It should have been you. Puzzled at what he meant. Should have been me? What should have been me? I thought, looking up, with blood trailing from my nose and lips. The last thing that I recognized was the toe of his boot coming straight for my face. The next thing that I remember was waking up sore, in extreme pain, lying on a hospital bed. Looking over, I could see my father sitting in the chair, his icy stare burning through me. Not anger, not rage, just a strange mix of hatred, disgust, and disappointment. A nurse came into the room holding a clipboard, snapping my father from his gaze. He looked up at her instead with an incredibly genuine-looking smile, one that even I would have bought if it weren't for the night prior. You had a pretty nasty fall out of that tree, huh, buddy? She said with a calming, pleasant tone in her voice. Tree, I thought. What exactly had my father told them? My father flashed me a fleeting glare, and I replied quickly, yeah, I guess I did, I said with a forced chuckle. Well, the bad news is you have 2 broken ribs, a badly fractured ankle, broken shin, and from the swelling on the side of your face, I'd say that it'll be a couple of weeks before you're able to see out of that eye again. My eye. I hadn't noticed, but if I closed my other eye, all I could see was a series of rainbow-like colors and faded shapes. It'll probably be at least 3 months before you can walk without crutches. I'd recommend that you stay off your feet for at least a few weeks before attempting to walk around, the nurse said. I said okay, and my father took me home. Not a word had been said on the drive to my house. Getting home, he helped me to my room and I got into bed. Where's Mom? I said weakly. He just shot a glare at me and said, She's out. Exiting my room, I heard the door lock from the outside. I was now entirely trapped, confined to a bed with a broken body in a locked room on the second floor. Within a few weeks of sleeping, eating bland oats, and thinking, only walking to the bathroom and back to bed, I was starting to feel better. Although walking was still a bit painful, it was doable. When my father entered my room, bringing me the same meal that I had eaten for almost a month, he was obviously drunk. It was a trend that I had noticed him starting recently. I asked, "May I please come back downstairs? I promise not to say or do anything. Just please let me come back downstairs." After looking at me with a thoughtful expression for a few seconds, he said blankly, "No." I sank into the bed, feeling defeated. I sighed. He closed the door, but this time I didn't hear the lock. I perked up, looking towards the door, hearing my dad's footsteps fade and then the sound of his SUV starting. He had forgotten to lock the door. Exiting the room, I moved my way down the stairs slowly, limping out on my crutches to the outside, thinking that perhaps I could get help. It was better than rotting away in that bed a single second longer. I was in luck. The neighbor lady across the street, Mrs. Gray, was out gardening. Her and my mother went to the same botanist club. A very sweet, kind old lady in her mid-60s, she waved to me and said, "Oh my, it's been such a long time since I've seen you. What happened to you, dear?" I began to speak, but I was suddenly cut off as I stared in terror at the sight of my father's SUV pulling up. She waved to my father as he got out of his car. He walked over with a perfect smile on his face and said, "I see you're back up, bud." Miss Gray laughed and asked what had happened to me, and he said, "This clumsy guy fell off the highest point on our tree when trying to trim it." "Oh, is that right?" Mrs. Gray said with a smile. "Yeah, I took quite a lot of damage," I said. "You should be more careful. How's Kate? I haven't seen her in quite a while," Mrs. Gray said while wiping the potting soil off her hands. "Kate went on a vacation for a bit," my father said as one would stating a cold fact. "What? No one has seen her? She never misses her botanist club. She went religiously and what vacation?" I thought to myself. Come to think of it, I haven't heard her car or her voice or seen her in a month. The last time that I heard her was when her and Dad were fighting all night. I knew that she didn't go on any vacation. I knew that my dad had done something to her because she wanted to talk. I swallowed the growing lump in my throat and agreed with him. We left, and as soon as we were back in the house, he told me to sit down. I did as he said, and he sat down across from me and laughed. "Well, boy, I have to give you credit. You really put me in a pinch. I mean, I can't keep you in your room now because all of the neighbors will get suspicious. I don't want to kill you because you're my son. I don't really know what to do with you, so you're free to move amongst the house. But if I catch you snooping again, I'll kill you." All I could do was nod. He nodded back and then went to his room. Without any other choice, I went to sleep on the couch. When I woke up, my dad was gone. I thought that it was a smart move to just lay low and not pursue anything. It had carried on like that for a few months. For a while, I had hoped that my mom had just left him, that she got sick of him and left after their fight. I had even tricked myself into believing it for a while. But that delusion came to an end as soon as I had come across the garage unlocked. Opening it, I found her sedan was parked dust-covered, and her purse and keys were sitting in the passenger seat. I felt like I couldn't stand. I felt weak. Deep down, I always knew that she didn't leave, but seeing the evidence in front of me, it almost brought me to tears. But I couldn't let myself cry. I couldn't let my father know that I knew what had happened. By this point, I was healing well, but I still didn't want to push it. I went back into the house and I sat down. Just in time, as my father had just come back home. Walking in, he just looked at me and then walked to the garage door without saying anything. He went into the garage and came back with a smirk. "Attaboy for not taking the bait. But don't think for a second that I don't have my eye on you," he said, patting me on the shoulder. "Anyway, I'll be posting more soon as I get my thoughts together. And I thank you all for your support."